Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. And have we got a treat for you today? Pamela Karanova. Great to see you.
Thank you. I'm super happy to be here. Thank you, Simon.
You're welcome. So this week, Pam was asking me what we should talk about for this episode of the podcast, and I thought, well, I'll have a look at what she's putting on her latest things on her website, and so I know you've really, you're putting in. There's a lot of new stuff going on, Pamela. So, I saw this quote, and I've never seen it before on your site, and we agreed that we were going to talk about this. So, or this is the starting off point really for a conversation. So the quote is from somebody called Young Pueblo, and it goes, "You can change your location, meet new people, and still have the same old problems. To truly change your life, you need to look inward, get to know and love yourself, and heal the trauma and dense conditioning in your mind. This is how you get to the root. Internal changes have significant external impact." And I thought, wow, doesn't that say so much? So why did you? This is on the homepage of your website, Pamela. Why did you pick it? Oh, you've muted yourself.
Sorry about that.
Yeah.
I think for me and my personal journey, and I've connected with adoptees all over the place. One of the main components of the adoptee experience is getting to the root of separation trauma, and what that looks like for each of us is going to be different. I selected that quote to be on the front page because it really meant a lot to me. Young Pablo is a really amazing poet and connects with people on different levels. And this one really stood out to me from adoptee lens of growing up and not knowing our truth, not knowing who we are and where we come from. And that actually, creates a rift in our healing process. In order to be able to heal and look inward and find out who we are and who we're not, we have to be able to have all of the pieces of the puzzle. And so I could really resonate with this. Because I actually ended up packing up a 22-foot U-Haul in 2005 and moved across the country away from all of my birth family and all of my adoptive family. And I called it more of an escape. It was an escape for me. It wasn't a healthy, happy situation at all. But in packing up and moving across the country, I changed my location. However, the root issues followed me where I went. And I moved across the country to start my life over. But then here I was sitting with, abandonment, rejection, grief, loss, all of these classic issues that a lot of adoptees struggle with. And so that stood out to me about that poem. And I ended up developing a 27-year relationship with alcohol that was not a healthy one. And it was my one of the number one coping mechanisms that I had when it came to processing my adoption story. The feelings that I had from being adopted were just so gigantically big. They were internal, and they were so deep inside that I didn't even know how to bring them to the table or to process them growing up. But alcohol was like my number one, best friend to help me avoid having to deal with that reality. I realized, even though I moved across the country to start my life over, a lot of people don't know this, but I changed my name. I renamed myself. My last name now, that's Karanova, was not my adopted name. It wasn't my birth name. It was a name that I created for myself, because for me it was sort of like divorcing a situation that I never signed up for. It was a really empowering, healing thing for me that I recommend any adoptee to do. I don't talk about it enough, but I'm going to be writing about it soon, how impactful that was. But I was changing my life in all of these ways, but getting to the root of the issues that I was running from and why I was drinking to begin with was something that I knew deep down that I had to do. And that really resonated with me in that poem as well, is you have to get to know and love yourself and heal the trauma and dense conditioning in your mind. And as adoptees, and I want to speak for myself, I struggled with really significant deep-rooted self-esteem issues, a lack of self-love, and I actually had a really deep internal self-hate, that I was born a bad baby. I was, all of these things that that basically made me feel bad about myself deep down. And I struggled significantly with trying to oversee that and get to the other side of that. It took me a really long time, but I did have to leave alcohol alone. I decided in 2012 that I was going to stop drinking alcohol. And that is when all of the root issues I had run from my whole life showed up and knocked on my door and said, okay, we're here. Now what are you going to do with us? So that's kind of a little roundabout way that I connected with that quote. And it's pretty significant, because that's kind of like the root, pulling the roots up, but actually trading them for new growth, a new person, a new me. And it I will not lie, it's not been a cakewalk. It's been a struggle pretty much every step of the way, but I guess the outcome almost over a decade later is really finding happiness within myself and transforming the internal hate and badness that I always felt into love, um, and really getting to know myself on the inside. So there is,
Yeah.
it pays off.
Yeah. Wow. The first thing I thought of is I didn't know the name change bit, as you said. Has it got a name? Because Nova means new, right, in Spanish, doesn't it? Or
Mm-hmm.
not go? Does it mean not? There was a car. There was a car called the Nova, which means
Huh?
it doesn't
It
go.
means new. Yep,
Yeah, but
means new.
Nova. Yeah. Does
Yep.
Cara mean something? Is Cara means road or something?
Well, when I created this name, I was really active in Christianity and the church. And the Kara is, oh my goodness, now I'm trying to remember it, because it was 2000. Well, I turned 40 when I got this name changed. The Nova is new, and then the Kara was for pure. And that
Oh,
was a new life and a new me and a new chapter, and kind of like me turning the page to a new everything. And so I wrote it. My name that I was adopted with, anytime I would even write it, I just hated it. I did not have a happy, loving adoptive home. I had a emotionally, sexually, and abusive home, and did not connect with my adopters even a little bit. And so writing their name my whole life was this really unhealthy attachment to them that I didn't want to have. I wanted to go into a new life, and I wanted to kind of wipe the slate clean and figure out who I am outside of that. I just felt like I couldn't do that with them in the picture. And so making the choice to change the last name, the only regret I have about it is that I didn't change my whole entire name. I wish I would have changed the first and the middle. But yeah, that's where Karanova came from. I started writing it out to see if I liked it. And I wrote it probably 1,000 times before I decided to take the plunge and go downtown and make it official. So yeah.
yeah. So are you still involved in the church?
I am not. I am actually an ex-evangelical these days.
Okay, right. Yeah, yeah. Did that help you along the way at some point, or?
It did help in quite a few regards. Being able to connect with a community of people was really helpful in a time where I felt like I walked away from everything I had always known and my adoptive family and this newfound birth family. I guess I've found great pain in my personal journey trying to walk what I describe as like a tightrope between these two families and like never really feeling like I fit into either of them. And I just decided I didn't want to play the game anymore. And so I kind of walked off into the sunset, created my own life. And so this church family was a second family. And it did help in that regard. I ended up about 7 years of coming out of the fog. After coming out of the fog, I ended up walking away from the church, and my views about Christianity totally changed based on how much they promote separation of mothers and babies. And I just can't believe in a God that that's who that God is all of the people, using him and his word to separate mothers and babies. And there were some other things. I feel like all of the time that I spent wanting to heal, I was using a lot of spiritual practices to try to just be healed. I am one of the adoptees that had a broken heart, and I literally thought I was going to die from a broken heart. Like my sorrow and my grief and my loss was so big that I almost took myself out of the world several times. And I was so focused while I was in the church and Christianity that I just wanted to be healed. And that was what I was taught, is that I needed to pray more and fast more, and I needed to tithe more and serve more, and I needed to do all these things. And there was something that I wasn't doing right to not receive this healing from God, because the mother wound was just so big. It was just, really close up, and I couldn't see around it. And I started learning about spiritual bypassing and what that was and what that meant. And I realized after spending so many years being a believer and giving God all of everything I had to give, that the reality was I felt like I was beating my head against a wall and I was never going to heal from this. And I came to my own conclusion, probably 2016, that I personally feel like the separation trauma and the mother wound is too big of a wound that to ever fully heal. That's for me and my personal journey. Now, the minute that I flipped a switch and decided that this pain from this wound is going to be a lifelong visitor. It's going to probably visit every Mother's Day. It's probably going to visit on the holidays. It's going to come out of the woodworks at times. And when it comes, instead of try to pray it away, I'm going to welcome it. I'm going to learn to sit with it, and I'm going to learn to embrace it. And for me personally, the minute that I did that was the minute that I started healing.
Yeah.
And the rat race was over. And that was the minute that I started to look inward and I started to acknowledge how I was feeling, why things were triggered inside of me. I started to learn how to process those really big adoptee feelings in healthy ways. And it was a learning curve. I mean, I didn't always do it great, but instead of looking for something outside of myself to heal me, I just totally went inward and got to know myself and love myself. And in that whole process, all of the feelings of badness started to just disappear. And I started to really acknowledge that maybe the wound for me is so extra big. Not all adoptees feel it as big as others do. It doesn't smother all adoptees, and some it does. For me, it almost killed me. It literally almost killed me. My grief was so big, I was planning a suicide, and I wanted it to look like an accident because I didn't want to inconvenience people any more than I did when I was born. And so getting to the root of all of that, being able to look inward and sit with the pain and learn how to process the pain in healthy ways without alcohol was the best decision that I ever made for myself, because then it kind of reverberates into the people I know and love. And then I can learn to process feelings and sit with them instead of run from them, and incorporate happiness into my life instead of this hyper focused sense of, I need to do more, I need to pray more, I need to fast more to be healed. I shifted the focus on, what if this pain is too big to heal for me anyway? And that's literally when I started healing.
Yeah. So one of my big mentors, she's still big in my life. She wanted to be adopted, she said, because she was actually she was abused in every way possible by her father, but she went to court and it didn't happen, the thing. But yeah, she was abused as a very young child. She says something that or she says something, I don't know, we've concocted it together, or that she led on this, or I don't know. If we're okay with not feeling okay, we're always okay. Yeah. If we're not feeling okay, if we're okay with not feeling okay, we're always okay. It's the fighting. It's the fighting the feelings. It's trying to, So we've got a big feeling. So we're trying to fight it. We're trying to numb it, right? So the alcohol is the big numbing thing, or we're trying to get rid of it by praying, or whatever method we use. It persists. What we resist persists, and it becomes an ever bigger thing. And if we kind of welcome it in, and we don't see it as a threat, we don't see it as the threat anymore, then it becomes less of an issue, right?
I agree. I agree totally. I do think that one of the biggest things for me, and probably a lot of adoptees, as the society that we live in paints this picture of adoption as a win-win. And I know that I was groomed growing up to be thankful, and my biggest heartbreak in life was my adopted mom's biggest dream come true. And so, I feel like a lot of times adoption is glossed over as this happy, box with a bow on top that doesn't acknowledge that we have every reason to be sad, mad, angry, all of the reasons and feelings that adoptees have that aren't a reflection of being thankful and grateful need to be validated. They are perfectly normal for the experience of being taken away from our biological mothers. So I think I love that concept of being okay with not being okay, because I think we're almost brainwashed in a sense that our feelings that we have on the inside are not welcome to come out. And I think that's one of the biggest struggles from speaking to adoptees and from my own personal journey, is letting these big feelings come out when we're really groomed from a really early age just to be thankful. Aren't you happy someone took you in when your own parents didn't want you? Aren't you thankful you weren't aborted? And all of these things that we get. So I think society as a whole paints this picture of adoption just being a win-win, when the reality is, before any adoption ever takes place, this big, huge event for our life is so big that it can impact us forever. And I think acknowledging that piece of it is really important, because when society and people that we know and love start to recognize and research and acknowledge what separation trauma is, then they can gain a better understanding of helping adoptees when they start sharing their feelings. I just think it's been a really big block for a lot of adoptees to share their feelings, because we've kind of been told our whole lives that we should be thankful and grateful. And the reality is that I'm thankful and grateful for things in life, but I'm not thankful and grateful for being adopted. I'm just not. And so we all feel differently about that. I can't ever say that my experience caused me to be thankful or grateful for all of the heartache and pain that I've experienced every step of the way, and the world gaslighting me that I shouldn't feel the feelings that I feel.
Yeah. Yeah. The grateful thing is, I've never been told that. I don't know whether this is, and I don't know, I haven't maybe asked enough English Brit adoptees whether they feel this, or whether it's more of a cultural thing. Interestingly, I was in the States. I came back a week ago. I was down in South Carolina, and I was working in a children's home and in elementary schools. And I wondered, because there seemed to be a lot of churches, right? So I did some Googling, and I kind of had this feeling that religion was a bigger thing in the US than it is in the UK. And the stats that I found reckoned that reckoned that the Americans are 3 times as religious as the people in the UK. And I thought, so the next question that came into my head was, why is that? And so I did some Googling on that. And I think that the second thing was that the church is seen as important because your social care in the States isn't funded to the same extent as it is in the UK. So the church steps in, like this children's home that I was working in. It's they've got a church on their campus, and they're very religious, religious people, but they're stepping in to to perform a role that wouldn't be performed by a church in the UK as a mass, because our social services, our government funded healthcare and social services is way higher. And so I thought, well, maybe that's why. I was thinking, well, does that cause more problems with the adoption coming through that, and adoption being supported by the church? And have you got a take on that, or am I?
Well, I have a take on it. I'm not as scripturally literate as some people are, so I don't complete my arguments or trying to point out things by the way of scripture.
Yeah.
I just never got into scripture that much to be able to do that. But one thing I do know is, the shame that is covered by women that get pregnant out of wedlock is a really, really big thing here in the United States. You would think that we'd be growing out of those times, but we're not. Anytime a woman ends up pregnant and isn't married, that's grounds for, society at large, and especially the churches. The evangelicals are really, really big at promoting adoption from the pulpit, and they use a lot of times the pro-life movement as one of the reasons to promote adoption, which, most of the adoptee community is not okay with that. We're not okay with being poster children for that. But I think that there is a kind of an outlook out there for women that have infertility struggles that they should automatically have a right to someone else's baby. There's a lot of reasons. I think one of the main ones, though, is the shame that is put on women that aren't married to give their babies to a better home, when reality is nobody can guarantee a better home, only a different home. So I mean, there's a lot of layers to the churches promoting adoption, but that's one of the biggest ones that I've noticed, over the years of shaming, the unwed mothers, and this expectation that you have to be married in order to have a child and raise it. It's still happening. It's still very big among the evangelical communities and the churches.
Yeah. So if I go, I think perhaps I took us down a little bit of a sideline there, but it's just been some stuff that's going through my head since being over there. Um, the if we go back to your kind of like your personal story, you talked about finding happiness within yourself. So what's helped you um, along that along that journey?
Well, finding happiness within myself, I really had to spend a long time by myself in order to do that. So I am single. Well, I'm not single now, but I was single for a really long time. And um, in that single season, I basically started to date myself and I started doing all these things that I never had even dreamed of trying to do before. And one of the biggest ones that I started doing was chasing waterfalls. Well, I've always had this really deep connection to nature. Even when I was a little girl, the homes that I grew up in were abusive, and so I would go outside to play and get lost in the woods and climb the trees, and created this really deep connection to Mother Nature. And so when I reconnected and kind of in my healing journey, coming out of the fog with nature, it was like a rebirth of, oh my gosh, I have my safe place back, the one I kind of, strayed away from during my 27-year drinking career. And so I started to chase waterfalls all over the state of Kentucky, and I fell in love with that. And I started to learn to love being by myself. And I knew when I started to learn to love being by myself, then I would start to attract the other people that were meant to be in my life at that point in my life. Walking away from, the drinking crowd was a big transition. Walking away from all of the people in the church was a big transition. Walking away from my adoptive families and my birth families was pretty much rejected by my birth parents and estranged from my adoptive parents. All of them are dead now. I was able to, kind of walk off into the sunset and find myself. It was a part of it was very lonely, but being adopted is pretty lonely, at least for me it is. So that wasn't as big of a thing as really just learning to be okay with different stages of my life and kind of embracing them and welcoming them and learning to love myself in the process of being single. I evolved a lot in that process. I changed my thinking in a lot of ways. What I stand for and what I don't stand for really kind of developed in a more profound way. Um, I don't think I could have ever gotten to this point unless I walked away from everyone, meaning my adoptive family and my birth family. It was one of the hardest decisions I ever made, but um, I had to save myself. And the relationships that I grew up in were not healthy. They were toxic, they were damaging, and I had to give myself permission to put myself first and walk away from them, because the reality is I didn't owe them anything. I didn't ask for them to adopt me. And I was not going to sign up to be involved with this, what I called a shit show, for the rest of my life. I felt like at some point I had to choose myself and find happiness. And, that's what I did.
Yeah.
It's been over a decade of a process, but I have arrived, and I'm still healing. I think that's going to be a lifelong. I've accepted that, adoption issues, relinquishment issues are going to be revisitors for the rest of my life. And that was a better fit for me than the agony of wanting them to be just healed and go away. It didn't work for me. That part didn't work. But just accepting that in the ebb and flow of my life, I'm going to find joy and happiness, because I have. And there's a lot of things that I love to do. I love hiking and chasing waterfalls, and I love painting, and I love being outdoors. I love camping. And then there's going to be times where I'm in just really, really deep sadness. And I just experienced that a couple months ago around the holidays, which I feel like is pretty normal for the circumstances of being an adopted person, So
Yeah. It's strange you use you use the word toxic, because I see on social all the time, and now you just seem to glow health to me.
How am I glowing?
You glow health.
Oh, I glow health, you
Glow,
said?
you glow, you exude.
Oh, I
You
hear
you
that a lot.
exude you exude health to me.
Oh, health, you said. Okay.
Yeah. Not
Yeah.
hell. No.
Health. Yes,
Health,
yes, yes,
yeah.
I got you. Well, yeah, I mean, I think when we can get healthy internally, it's going to exuberate out externally. And so, the one of the keys is, for me anyway, has been fighting the world for my truth. Nobody handed me a single piece of it, but I knew that if I didn't get it all, I was going to die. I was not able to navigate the world on the world's terms, with secrecy, shame, half truths, and not being able to have the information that every single adopted person should have, is who am I and where did I come from? That what is something that I consider the fight of my life. I actually wrote about that, in an article, the fight of my life, and what it was like, to have to fight the world for my truth. And I think once people realize that, even though they in their minds might think that they're protecting us from being hurt from whatever we might find, there's actually a really significant layer of deception, that's being cast in the adoptee's life, where we can't heal from secrecy and lies and half truths. If I didn't get all of my truth, I would not be sitting in front of you today, or being able to share my story, because it bothered me that bad to not know where I came from and who I was. So once I gathered all the clues to my truth, even being rejected by my birth parents, which was the biggest disappointment of my whole life, now that I have all the truth, I can accept it, and I can move forward with healing from it, because I can't accept it if I don't know what I'm accepting.
Yeah.
Which leaves adoptees stagnant and broken and hurt, and in jails and prisons and mental health facilities and treatment facilities, and 4 times more likely to attempt suicide.
Yeah.
So people have to get on the right side of wrong and start helping us find our truth and get our truth,
Yeah.
if we want it. Some adoptees don't need it or want it.
Yeah. You said earlier on that you came to your own conclusions, and I thought that's so true. We have to come to our own conclusions, don't we? Like nobody else's conclusion is going to work for us. It has to be ours, right?
You're so right about that. For whatever reason, there has always been this really, really strong desire to see for myself. You can tell me, anybody can tell me all day long what's on the other side of the fence, but until I see it and I get to experience it for myself, I wasn't taking no for an answer, because I know a lot of adoptees, myself included, deal with lies. I was told my birth father was dead, and it was a lie. And it made me, I said, if he's dead, I want to see his grave, and I want a DNA test connecting me to that man. And I was never going to believe that he was dead until I got those two things. And sure enough, I showed up at his door, and he was very much alive, and I got to see his face. And I was born with that persistence of, I didn't even think twice about who would be harmed or who would be hurt by what I was searching for my truth. I just knew that if I didn't find my truth, I was going to die. And so you're exactly right. I say now the grass isn't always greener on the other side, but I had to be the one to see instead of everyone else telling me.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when I read that quote, when I was looking at it again from the second time, and I was thinking about how it relates to us as adopted people. It says that you can change your location, meet new people, and I thought, well, we can meet new people, but what if we're meeting old people, as in our birth mothers, right? Who we have we've met them, we've been part of them for 9 months, but this idea of we can meet new people and it doesn't work out, and I guess if we're going to go on a reunion, if we're going to search, we're going to look, if we're going to search and we're looking for a reunion, we don't know whether we're going to find her or him if we're interested in the birth father as well, and we don't know how it's going to work out, and we don't know whether we're going to get rejected again. So my own thing about being rejected, I mentioned it on another podcast I recorded earlier on today, was that I was sat in a therapist's room and I was actually terrified of being rejected again by my birth mother, right? So that came to me, that terror came to me, that terror visited me for about 20 seconds, right? Less than that, about 10 seconds, but it's been the most intense terror I've ever felt in my life, right? And so I went cold. I froze solid with fear, rigid with fear, and then something rose up within me when I burned red. I burnt red with anger, and I thought, I'm not going to have this. I'm not going to let this fear of this rejection kind of blight my life. And that's when I restarted the search facility. Sorry, restarted the search process. But if we're pinning all our hopes on meeting new people or old people, as in the birth mother, and it doesn't work out, then we could be barking up the wrong tree. And another thing that my mentor Liz says is that happiness is an inside job. So we don't, in the West, everybody lives in this world of, not everybody, the majority of people, whether they're adopted or not adopted, I'll be happy when, and then fill in the blank. I'll be happy when I get a promotion. I'll be happy when I lose. So speaking about myself, I lose my love handles, little bits of fat around my tummy. Yeah. I'll be happy when I get my promotion. I'll be happy when I get a new house. Or, from an adoptee's perspective, I'll be happy when I reunite with my birth mother and it all goes well. But we're delaying our feelings. We're putting our feelings on hold until something happens in the outside world. And feelings are an inside job. They only ever come from within us. So, what are we doing? What do you make of that? It sounded like I was rambling a bit there. I don't know.
No, you're fine. I guess I would just say it's with each adoptee, their outlook on that and desire to need to know the truth is going to be bigger for some and not the other. For me, it was so big that I couldn't carry on a loving relationship with myself, let alone anyone else, until I saw her face. So for me, it wasn't like I was choosing that. Some adoptees are, impacted very differently by this. But for me, the pain of the unknown was so big, not knowing who she was or where she was, that I couldn't see anything else in my life other than needing to know who she was and where she was. It was killing me inside. Now, for me, I wasn't provided with the tools, being an adopted person, on how to navigate feelings like that. The world that we live in does not provide adoptees tools. Just now, probably over the last 5 years, there's adoptee-centric therapists out there. But I was in therapy my whole entire life and never been able to share my adoptee feelings with a therapist, and they never helped me identify or get them out. Like, they didn't facilitate, do you think adoption had something to do with this? None of that. So I think it would just depend on the different levels of how the adoptee feels about, just having a choice of enjoying life now versus the pain that they carry is so big that they can't see past it. From my experience in networking with adoptees all over the world for over a decade, most adoptees lean on the side of their pain being so great that it's really hard to focus on relationships and raising kids and marriages and all of this. I mean, a lot of them do it, but it's a constant, never-ending agony to not know who they are and where they come from. And so for me personally, and I'm sure maybe other adoptees can relate, finding my birth mother didn't solve all the problems.
No.
It actually opened a whole can of worms of new problems. And so I traded the pain of the unknown and the agony and what I call mental torment of the unknown for a new pain of rejection, which was a totally different kind of agony. It wasn't as much torment as it was just sorrow and agony of rejection. And I don't think there's really, they say, prepare. I don't think that anything in this world would have prepared me how to navigate the feelings associated with that terror that you're talking about. Yeah.
When we're told to prepare, like,
yeah,
it's just rubbish, isn't it? I mean, for anything, we have no idea. We have no idea what's going to happen. We have no idea how we're going to feel about what's going to happen. We are really, all human beings are not great at predicting how future events are going to make them happy. It isn't a thing. And this preparing and it's like another mentor of mine says, in theory, there's no difference between theory and practice. But in practice, there's a hell of a load of difference between theory and practice. So somebody telling us ahead time to prepare, well, we're not making a bed, are we? We're not doing something trivial. We have no idea how what's gonna happen, whether they're gonna do that. I was just I guess similar to other parts of your story, I was just like, I'm going at this, like I'm not going to let this fear, I'm not going to let this fear stop blight my life. I'm going to find the yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm lost for words here. That's not really good for a podcaster, is it? Being lost for words.
No, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine.
So the reason I asked about the church is because the shift that you have been through seems huge. It seems, yeah, it seems really big, and I don't know how big the sober stuff was. You do talk about that quite a lot, so I presume that was huge. You talk about the nature stuff. I thought maybe I had the completely wrong end of the stick, right? I thought maybe there'd been some religious stuff that actually helped you, but no, that's initially there was some community, but after that it was not a help. It was more of a hindrance. Have there been any other big pillars of your life that have helped you on this turnaround?
Actually, yes. 2017, I was in a really, really dark place with my adoptee journey. At that point, I was 7 years into not drinking alcohol. I was feeling all the feelings, but what do you do when a lot of even 2 or 3 different adoptee related for me, tragedies happen in the same period of time? It was complete emotional and mental overload. I did not, still at that point, I tried to seek therapy, and I ended up therapying the therapist because they were not familiar with relinquishment trauma, adoption trauma, the primal wound, any of that. And I'm teaching them about it. And I just say to myself, I'm not going to do this anymore. Like, this is pointless to me to come here. And so I just kind of threw my hands in the air and I went home, and I ended up in this really dark pit of despair, of hopelessness, that no matter what I do, I can't get help anywhere. That's when I put a plan together of trying to leave the world, just wanting it to look like an accident. And my pain was so big. I ended up, my adopted mom that I was estranged from passed away. It wasn't a thing that she passed away because I did not have a relationship with her. It was more of this expectation of how I should respond, and I didn't have that response, and I couldn't pull it out of anywhere. It was more of a sadness that that was the one shot at a mother that I had, and she didn't make the mark. She was very mentally ill and not able to care for me. And so that happened. I found a brother that was the happiest part of my whole story. We built a relationship for 5 years. He was my birth father's son, only to find out that he was actually not my brother at all. We didn't share any DNA. One of the pieces that I really promote now is all adoptees get DNA testing before you build a relationship, because that literally just broke my heart. And he ended up getting killed in a motorcycle wreck, probably a month after this discovery that we weren't siblings. And I ended up going back to Iowa to meet my grandmother on my birth father's side for the first time. Without his permission. He did not give me the gift of being able to go, based on his wishes. He actually forbid me from going, but someone else in the family invited me, and I went back to the land that my ancestors came from. I was in the middle of the country in the small town in Iowa, standing on a dirt gravel road in the middle of all these fields where my grandmother's house used to be, but it was done. It was destroyed to the ground now. And something about that experience when I ended up going home, this really gigantic grief came over me that almost killed me again. I did not know what to do with it. All of these things happened in about a 3-month period, and I just wanted out. I didn't know how to deal with these things. I didn't know where to go, what to do. I built relationships with adoptees all over the world, and I couldn't get on the computer to say, help me, I'm wanting to die right now. I had a little glimmer of I guess, strength to put a vision I had into action, which is what now is known as Adoptees Connect. Adoptees Connect was a vision many years before it ever actually came to life. And I knew in the darkest, one of the darkest parts of my whole entire life, that I couldn't possibly be the only adoptee going through these really deep issues like this. And that is actually what pulled me out of the darkness, is putting action behind the vision of Adoptees Connect. And I would say within a 3-month period of me making the choice to put action behind it, the first Adoptees Connect group was off the ground here in Lexington, Kentucky. And then we had another one in Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And it took the pain of the experience, and it brought great purpose to all of it. And one of the best, most healing pieces of my entire journey is being able to connect with other adoptees in real life. It's a magical thing when you're in person talking to people that speak the same language as you. So that is one of the most profound pieces of my journey. Is, I was in recovery settings for 10 years, and the recovery settings were set up that you're never going to recover. You're not going to recover. You're going to be on this recovery bandwagon until you die. And the minute that you get off of it, you're going down. I had to walk away from that, grant myself the gift of recovery, and I now consider myself someone that is recovered. None of the recovery programs anywhere that I know of are going to give you that gift. I had to gift it to myself. It totally goes against the popular narrative of the recovery lingo and mindset. I just had to challenge anything on the planet telling me that I don't have the ability to recover. I did 10 years on the sober bandwagon in recovery, and then I gave myself the gift of being recovered. I give back to the community by hosting, the whole entire world of the Adoptees Connect, with planting groups and networking with people all over the place to plant groups. And so I would say connecting with other adoptees in real life has been a game changer for me, and giving myself the gift of being recovered. Doesn't mean I'm not still healing, because I am, but I'm no longer a part of any recovery programs. I have enough confidence in myself that I now have a healthy relationship with alcohol. I found in finding my truth that both my birth parents were alcoholics and they died that way. One of the biggest pieces of my journey is finding that truth, never giving up on finding that truth, and it's saving my life. Like, having that piece of information about them dying as alcoholics really impacted me to not want to die like them. I want to reevaluate my relationship with alcohol. I stopped drinking for 10 years to work on my trauma. Trauma work and substance abuse does not mix well together. So I gave myself the gift of working on all of these adoptee related wounds. And then now I've graduated over to being recovered. I live my life every day doing whatever I want to do, surrounded by, a small group of people that I consider, people that I'm close to. So definitely connecting with other adoptees in real life has been a lifesaver.
Yeah. Because we watch a lot of like 2 hours television each night, and there's, if any cop show, there's always an AA meeting. There's always an AA storyline, and I see them. I hear them saying these things like, hello, I'm Hank and I'm an alcoholic. Do they still do that? Do they still do that in the recovery plans?
They do. And what's funny is I've been handed the big book since I was 15 years old, and they said, all you got to do is read this, agree with it, and go find God, and everything's going to be fine. And I never once in my whole life have said I'm Pam and I'm an alcoholic, because I've wholeheartedly felt like my birth parents died alcoholics, but they never did what they had to do to get to the root of why they drank to begin with. I got to the root. Okay. Me being labeled an alcoholic is not helping me identify relinquishment trauma was my root issue. Until I brought that to the table to work on it without alcohol being in my life, I could have easily adapted to say I'm Pam and I'm an alcoholic, but I've never once said that. And I'm never going to claim I'm an alcoholic. Not knocking anybody that does, because I know everybody's where they are and it works for some people. It just didn't work for me. And I was never going to apply that label. But yes, they still do
that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because it seems to me like, from an outsider perspective, and obviously just my opinion, that reinforces it. The thing that you said,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like, I am recovered, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
That sounded like, and it's not a bumper sticker, right? It's the way you feel, and I can tell that, it's your truth. You're not just putting a brave face on it. But like the idea of like reinforcing any identity, any label, as you say, is really, it's really dangerous, isn't it? Because it kind of like it sets it more and more in stone. You keep on hearing it, and in other words, in other worlds, right? we look to bust beliefs. We look at something like a limiting. People talk about limiting beliefs, right? And we look to bust limiting beliefs, but then in AA, they've got this thing where they're reinforcing the belief.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I struggle to put those two things together, because it doesn't seem. I'm in the belief busting camp,
Mm-hmm.
generally speaking. I think I think that the idea that there are such a thing as limiting beliefs is itself a limiting belief, right? Because
I
we're giving
agree.
limiting beliefs more credibility. What are limiting beliefs made out of? Well, they're made
Right.
out of thought. Well, yeah, like it's like we're taking something that is concrete, and we're putting extra steel reinforcing in it.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're building it up. We're building this up. We're building these beliefs about ourselves so that they're bigger. And the bigger they are, the more they're going to hang around. So I don't know why people do that in there. There must be some kind of reason for it. I don't know.
Well, and I think sometimes people are looking for a place to belong, and they can go there and, fit right in. I know that there are good things that come out of those
Yeah,
groups
definitely.
for
Yeah.
a lot of people. One of the statements that I remember always hearing is once an alcoholic, always an alcoholic. And, I was not going to co-sign for that. Like, no, I'm not going to attach that to my life for the rest of my life,
Yeah.
because I've put in the work to dig the trauma up and put it on the table and work on it. The minute I started learning how to sit with it and process it in healthy ways was the minute literally I started healing. And that was when everything changed for me. Instead of focusing on my alcohol use, that was just a symptom of a root cause. That really was, that was just a symptom. But to carry that label for the rest of my life was something I refused to do. I refuse to do it. And there's not one single person that I know on the whole planet that has said that they are recovered. I don't know anybody that says that. I have a shirt printed with recovered on it just because I'm like, I'm recovered. Because when you're in the recovery mindset, you don't recover. I don't know anybody that's recovered. They teach you and train you and condition you that you have to do this for the rest of your life, because the minute you stop, you're going down. You're going to backslide, you're going to die, you're going to relapse, you're going to do all of these things. And there's a lot more conventional ways to work on our relationship with alcohol or drug use now. And, adoptees that want to get better and want to get well and want to learn how to feel the feelings that they're having. I guess first I would say that the feelings that any of us have are very normal for a not normal situation, because it's not normal to be separated from your birth mother at the beginning of your life. But making a conscious choice to want to get better and feel better and work on these issues without substances, because it's impossible to heal from adoptee issues if substances are involved. It just doesn't work. So even in your mind, if you say, I want to put that on the shelf, like I did for 10 years. And now I'm in a much more well-rounded place, and I have a lot more wisdom and internal dialogue to not fall into the same patterns that I had for 27 years. Knowing my birth parents are alcoholics, I'm not going to be a big drinker now. Like now that I've worked on my issues and I have a lot of tools in my self-care toolbox, that are healthy,
Yeah. Did you ever get an FASD diagnosis?
No. And I don't know if I just kind of slid through there, never really identifying that. But I did learn when I was young that my birth mother drank the whole pregnancy. I learned that people never saw her without a drink in her hand. And I learned that at her funeral too, that she was a huge drinker. But I never, I don't know why I never entered into that area. I guess I'll never know now. I mean, I'm 48 now, so Yeah, I don't know. I do know, I tell people I had my first drink in utero because my birth mother was a drinker every day of my pregnancy. She was drinking alcohol.
Yeah, yeah. I've had I've spoken. Yeah, I've had some adopted mums on the show. We only do adoptees now, but I had some adopted mums on the show that have kids with FASD, and it's really, yeah, it's really tough stuff, really tough stuff. So I'm conscious of time. Is there anything else that you'd like to share? Anything that I've not asked you about that you'd like to?
I guess maybe just a word of encouragement for any adoptees out there that, are kind of stuck in the middle of um, really not knowing which way to turn, or not really having all the tools that they need to work on their issues, that not to give up, not to give up hope. And Adoptees Connect was created and founded by adoptees for adoptees. If anyone's interested in planting a group in their community, we are international now. We have a group in Queensland. We have several groups in Canada, quite a few in the United States. So it's created a safety net, lifelines for adoptees in person. So if anybody's interested in learning more about it, they can go to adopteesconnect.com and learn more about that. And then I do have a new project that I have launched recently called the Real Adoptea Moxie.
Yeah, I've seen the stuff. Yeah, it looks
Yeah.
good. What is the Moxie? I don't. Is that
Really just like grit and sass and spunk and kind of fierceness in my writing
Okay.
platform, where I'm not sugarcoating anything when it comes to the adoption experience. And the best thing about that platform is it's a supportive community of people that are interested in learning more about the adoption experience from an adult adoptee. So it's on Substack. It's a really cool platform if anybody's interested in checking it out. And I think writing has been one of my number one healing tools as well. I recently wrote about not being able to verbalize feelings very well growing up, but then when I was able to share them through my fingertips without having to verbalize them, a lot more came out, and it just kept coming out and coming out and coming out. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, that platform is for that.
Do you type it or do you write it with a pen?
I type it.
Yeah.
I do
Okay.
type it, yeah. But
Yeah.
it's been a huge healing tool. I encourage other adoptees to start writing if it feels like that's where they're leading to go. Writing is a huge healing tool, really huge.
Yeah. I'm this I didn't hear this in an adoption uh, context, but somebody told me that actually writing with a pen
Hmm.
is somehow more freeing than keyboard stuff.
I
I
believe it. For some people, it probably could be. I think something about getting it down on paper and releasing it through a pen or a pencil or whatever you write through can impact
Yeah,
people in different ways. Yep. And
that's
another component is sharing it with someone else, or sharing it with a platform of people. I can write to myself all day, but sharing it with even one person you trust releases like the burden that you carry feeling these feelings. And that's really, really beneficial. Some people are sharing their journeys with the world, which is what I chose to do, because there's adoptees everywhere that reach out to me saying, oh my gosh, it's the first time I heard somebody share something that's really been deep down in there. So yeah, sharing it as well as writing it is a really, really good healing tool.
well, thanks a lot. I mean, it's been well worth the wait. I'm so glad that we got to do this together.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me, Simon. It's been awesome to be here with you and chat it up today.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, listeners. We'll speak to you very soon. Thank you. Goodbye.